It's been 5 years since Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg advised women and told women to lean in. Michelle Obama recently dismissed this, saying it doesn't work all the time. CNN's Paula Newton spoke to the Lean In president, Rachel Thomas.
So what we've learned is women are leaning in. So women are doing their part. We've been getting more degrees for 30 years. Women ask for raises and promotions at the same rates as men, so as often as men. And women are not leaving the workforce at a higher rate than men, which I think we've thought for years and years. So our big message this year is women are doing their part. They're leaning in. Now we need companies to lean in too.
Companies tell us that they are leaning in. The stats would tell us otherwise. Women are still incredibly underrepresented, especially in the top jobs. Why? Even though so many more people have been talking about it, and the companies are giving it lip service at least.
I think there's two things. The first is companies really need to start treating gender diversity like a real business priority. So how do you get things done in business?
And I'm going to stop you there.
Sure.
Once you start talking about jargon, like gender diversity, people freak out. When it gets down to it, I know that there are some people in the workplace that say women want to bow out of their careers. They want to take a career break. They don't want to be there for all the hours.
Numbers don't show that.
Go ahead. Tell me what the numbers are.
So women are staying in the workforce at the same rate as men. Only 2% of women say they're leaving the workforce to focus on family. So a very small amount. Not that all employees shouldn't be able to leave the workforce to focus on family. Of course they should. The big thing that we're seeing is, to your point, companies are committed. I truly believe there's a high commitment. But there's a difference between being committed and treating it like it is truly imperative to your business. So what do? You have a really compelling business case, you take the time to back it up with numbers, you set goals, you track progress, you hold managers and leaders accountable, and too few companies are doing all of these things. The other thing you focused on, which is right, like we don't have enough women in senior leadership, but we've seen now for the third year in a row, it's not that women are hitting a glass ceiling, as much as it is that they're hitting a wall right out of the gate. So women are less likely to get hired into entry-level jobs, although, as I said, we've been getting more degrees for decades, and women are less likely to get hired in manager-level jobs and far less likely to get promoted into them.
Anecdotally, so many people would fight you on that, and yet you're saying the study doesn't lie.
So what I will tell you is we looked at 279 companies this year employing 13 million people. That is a heck of a lot of data. So I don't know about others, but anecdotes are anecdotes, and I think bringing this data to life with stories is so important, because as women, we've experienced a lot of this firsthand, but numbers don't lie, and the story is really clear. Women are underrepresented at every level. The numbers aren't moving, and they're getting stuck right at the manager level, so they never catch up.
And you know that big question's coming from me. Why? Why is this still happening, especially when a lot of us do not feel as if there's some campaign to keep us away from the top jobs?
So we know, or we believe we know what's happening at that step up to manager. So performance bias, we all struggle with performance bias. So we tend to overestimate men's performance and tend to underestimate women's performance. And as a result, men are more often hired on potential, and women are more often hired on what they've accomplished. So as you get further on in your career, that still is out there, but it has a little bit less of an impact. When you're early on and you have a very short resume, very short track record, performance bias is more likely to rear its ugly head, and that is why we think that women are really getting hurt on that first step up into management. So one of our big recommendations this year, and I like it because it's really actionable, focus on that manager level. Focus on evening out the pipeline there, and we really believe the numbers will start to move much more dramatically.
Paula's with me now. Lean In was a policy, if you like, or an idea of its time, and post then, of course, you've then got Harvey Weinstein and the whole hashtag #MeToo movement, which does raise the question for you, Paula, as you look at it, having spoken to Rachel, where do you think it stands at the moment?
Well, I think let's leave Rachel's comments aside for one moment. In speaking to CEOs, Richard, in speaking to women who head these so-called diversity councils, they still say that slow and steady wins the day. Why? They do not want a backlash in the workplace, Richard, and they want to make sure that they understand how and why people are getting promoted, all people, and how they can then promote more diversity. Again, it is about Me Too, but it's also about Me 3 and Me 4 when it comes to other groups that are not getting promoted. And they agree with Rachel in the fact that they feel in themselves that they support people of diversity, that they support women, and that when they look at their stats, it's not there. So they are doing The companies that can afford it and are taking the time are doing very comprehensive audits of exactly where everything is at. But Richard, you and I both know, and you mentioned Harvey Weinstein, that this is just such a complicated issue. Let's put aside the corporate workspace for a second, and let's assume in certain of those areas that there is not sexual harassment, that there isn't any criminal behavior. And then you get to Harvey Weinstein, which very clearly crosses a line. Now, CNN will be reporting throughout the week on whether or not charges against him on sexual assault will actually fall apart. We don't know that yet. But what has definitely happened in the Me Too era is the fact that there is certainly an acceptable way to act towards women in the workplace, and there is an unacceptable way to work. And people are starting to figure out that line more clearly and understanding that, certain things are completely unacceptable, but you even start hearing from men in the workplace now, anecdotally, saying, I didn't know that made you uncomfortable. I'm going to stop that. And I think that that's been a good thing. Now, Richard, I don't know if you have time, because if we start to talk about Lean In and Sheryl Sandberg and the post-Me Too movement and the post-Lean In movement, that also gets so much more complicated.
Right. We have 30 seconds, Paula. Are we on the other side of this yet?
Absolutely not. No, no, no. And the reason is those statistics. You go back to the numbers at all times. And when you look at the level of promotions and how and where women are achieving, they're just not. And like she said, it is about the pipeline. The pipeline is still not there. And a lot of things were changed. And we're still at a point where there's still a backlash to the Me Too movement as well. All of this just has to evolve. I can tell you in speaking to executives, though, Richard, they tell me they're on it.
Paula, thank you. We'll talk more about this as the week goes on. In fact, we're going to be talking about the gender pay gap on tomorrow's The Express.